Hi everybody, Sharon from Vivid Days. Couldn't say that right. It's Sharon from Vivid Days. If you are a subscriber, thank you for rejoining me and spending some time with me. If you're new to my channel, welcome, and where have you been? Hopefully you'll enjoy some of my back catalogue. Today is going back to resin for beginners again, and yes, it's another ocean piece, but I ask for no forgiveness because I am enjoying creating ocean pieces. So not only is it a tutorial on how I created this piece, it's actually going to show you, if you get a piece that you don't like, how do you block out a section of your resin art and then change the image so that you are pleasantly surprised and you enjoy it. And sometimes you have to take a leap of faith and you have to hold your breath and you have to understand what it is that you're trying to do. This piece is now finished, but I'm going to come in and just dome it, just one clear coat of dome, just because some of the shells and little bit of bling in there is just standing out of the water a little bit too much, so it's just really to protect it, but it'll be a very thin coat. But I love this piece. I think there is a lot of depth and movement in those ocean waves, and I love the slowly blended colours, and then how this wave here is just coming onto the shoreline, and we've got some cheeky little starfish and a few very little shells, very small ones. I had to search for those, and some sand. But we edited out the bottom section of this and reworked it. So if you're interested in this piece and recreating it yourself, remember to make me aware that you've done it, because I love to see what you have created from, whether it be colours, whether it be the work that I've done. But if you could hashtag Sharon Lindley inspired me, that would be amazing. I'll be able to check it out. You can see Zeus in the background. Hello Zeus. But yeah, I hope you enjoy. Shame there's no sunlight in here because there's a nice little bit of glitter in there. But unfortunately you can't see it. But come take a walk on the ocean with me, and hopefully you will enjoy this video. I didn't know what I was trying to say there, but yeah. Thumbs up, subscribe, share, comments are always welcome. Come back and see me. I hope wherever you are safe and well, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye. Hi, before I start breaking down my process, if you don't want to watch me create the ocean piece, you just want to see me with the editing section, jump forward to 38 minutes. If you are wanting to stay here and go through this whole process with me, then listen on. Firstly, thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with me. I know it is precious, and thank you for still coming back if you're already a subscriber. I know I've had a couple of months off my channel, but I'm feeling re-energized, refocused. I've got lots of projects coming up, and I'm hoping to break down processes more for beginners and hopefully inspire other people with colours. But what I'm doing on this one, as opposed to the one I released last week, is I am painting my MDF board white. This time to show you, if you're using the light colour underneath some of these transparent pigments, how that will come through. Now, I come in here quite rough, and again, this is just to map out my composition. The resin and the pigments will cover it, but there will still be depth in this going through to the bottom, so it will all add value. Anyway, this board came from the range, and it was about, I think, £6. And I always look for MDF boards that I can upcycle. So it's all taped at the back. By adding your acrylic, you're priming your board, you're helping your composition, but you're also sealing those edges. So you can see I get my brush right to the edges. Now you can tape up your sides if you want to protect them. For me, I know I'm going to go over them and put a coat of white on them. So if I do get a little bit of acrylic on there, it's not going to be too much of a problem at this stage. But I always put masking tape on the back of my board when there's gaps, and I put 3 layers on them, and I really push my fingernails in there. So if you do get any resin leakage, that's going to minimize the damage on there. So you don't have to do this stage, it is all optional, but this is my process, and this is the steps that I took to get to what I think is a stunning piece. I love how the waves are rolling in, and it looks like there's the reflection on the ocean of that wave rolling in and that foam. Anyway, to save you time, this particular part of me painting this board is fast forwarded, but as we get to the resin stage, which has 3 layers, you will see it done in real time. as I'm starting to do now. If you don't want to watch the full length of this and you want to see everything in a time lapse, I do have an alternate video where I'm not going to be speaking. There is just going to be a bit of music being played, but you will all see at times 700 speed. In between all this, I'll try and put a little bit of Sharon's Dodgy FM on. And I've got, I think I mentioned it before, I've got a few exciting projects working behind the scenes. But yeah, I'm going to take a breather and maybe put on a little bit of Sharon's Dodgy FM, and then I'll be coming back with some commentary. I hope wherever you are in the world, you are safe and well, and thank you so much for spending your time. But as always, if you think it's worth it, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already, and also leave a comment. It really helps my channel. And yeah, speak soon. Bye bye. Hope you're feeling nice and relaxed. This is me taping up the back area, and you can see what I mean by I put my fingers and push it into the little gaps down the MDF just to make sure that there is a seal, and it really does help with that resin not coming through. Once I've done that, we are going to be ready to go into my art space and start getting the resin prepared. I use 300 mils of resin. It's a medium viscosity and it's a 1-to-1, so 1 part resin to 1 part hardener. Mix it for 3 minutes, and that's just me showing you I'm putting tape around the edge to protect it as I put my resin on. That's my Super Sparkle White. I like to add a tiny little bit of that into my mixed resin. I'm going to be using some real shells in here, and I want to pick out the smallest we've got, and a couple of cheeky little starfishes. Now, you could go with just one. I went with a few. Pretend there's been a storm and it's washed up. I had real sand, which was craft sand. I had some crystals that went into here, and I basically used these 3 colours, which is the turquoise, the ultramarine, the casting calf opaque, and the cyan. Make sure your board is level from every angle, because it will ruin your composition if you want to be controlled with your waves. Wear PPE, so wear your gloves please. I tend to double glove so that if I do get in a sticky mess and I take a pair off, I've still got some gloves on there. Wear a respirator. I recycle those cups that you see there. The resin comes out, but if you clean them while it's wet, you get most of it out. And stir for 3 minutes. You're not going to see me stirring for 3 minutes, because how boring would that be? Once it is stirred for 3 minutes, I added my Super Sparkle White to it, mixed it through again, and I'm slowly applying my clear resin to where the sand area is going to be. Now with sand, you can choose to do what I'm doing for this one, which is put your clear resin down, let it self level out a little bit, then add your sand into that area, cleaning as I go. Look, it is so much easier for me if you use one paper towel, wipe it clean, spray it with alcohol, wipe it again. You've got no sticky mess. It's all ready to use for next time, and you're using little waste. Anyway, I'm using my popsicle stick to push the resin into the edges. A key stage for me, I think, when I'm doing my ocean resin is control with the amount of resin you're putting on there. So I'm trying to help it self-level by dragging it and scooping it forward. It's going to force it to level out, because the last thing you want is if it's not level by the time you start applying colours or the sand, it's going to continue to move and it's going to distort everything. So I tend to use my dark pigments and work my way to light. That way I can use 1 cup and then add the lighter tone once I've got rid of all the resin in there, and it will draw through a few of those pigment colours to it. You're not going to lose the colour of the next one, but it helps with the blending of it. Now, one thing you do need to make sure is before you start to add your resin, make sure that your acrylic is dry to touch. I waited a couple of hours in between it, only because I was going to cook tea. Otherwise, you're going to drag your pigments up into your resin and you could get floaty pieces within it, which is not going to be good. Now, although I'm using my ultramarine towards the top area, you can see me doing little lines. That's just to help with the blending process. You will see me grab my popsicle stick and drag it through lengthways and vertically. That's just because I want to get a nice blending of colour and no harsh stopping line. And again, forcing the resin into the edges and helping it self-level. So this is the cyan blue. And again, starting more towards the top, I drag a few bits through to the top and then start to get the main bulk in the middle and drag it through to the edge. You don't have to do this. You can work with any colours you have got. You don't even have to use transparent pigments. The reason that I like it is I want to see the depth down to the bottom of the board. Now, unfortunately, with the camera angle, you don't always see the depth. I apologise. Sometimes my hand gets in the way. I apologise. At the minute, I'm not getting the best camera angles for everybody. So either you're happy or I'm happy. I will start using my top camera so you can see on top and a little bit closer. But I wanted for this project for you to see the full process and the length of the board. Now, you might think I'm prematurely scraping the resin. All again is I'm doing is trying to firstly help it self-level, let it bleed in together, and because I'm using only 300 mils of resin, it was pretty tight that it was going to cover the board. Now this is the turquoise, I forgot my colour there. Obviously using that more towards the front, and when that kisses the clear resin you should get some colours bleeding through into that. Now I did want to protect the beach area. It didn't happen. My ocean took over the beach area more than I wanted, hence where we got to see, or you will get to see, the section of me. How do you strip a resin piece of art where you can edit out a big section? Because if you love the top part but you're not enjoying the bottom part, how can you do it? Well, that's what this video is about, because the client really enjoyed the top part, but we just needed to work on the bottom part until we were both happy with that. But it provided a perfect video for the channel, just so that you can see. You do have to have a leap of faith. You do have to be brave. Sometimes it doesn't go to plans. I've had quite a few pieces recently that's not gone as planned, but they still make beautiful pieces in their own right, and they'll still be up for sale shortly. Anyway, I am digressing, aren't I? I'm going to leave you to a little bit of music while I'm doing the blending phase. As I do the casting craft or start to put the sand on, you should understand what it is I'm trying to do. But if I miss anything vital, I will come in and add a little bit of commentary. But hope you relax while I put a bit of Sharon's Dodgy FM on. So as I move my sand back and forth in multiple different directions, you can slowly see it sinking in the resin. It'll slowly all go wet looking. If you wanted to keep your sand looking dry, you would most likely have to add it after your resin is cured or just about to cure and put it on top, and it will adhere to it kind of like a glue, and you should keep it like a normal dry sand colour. Anyway, I am slowly applying my starfish and shells in what I think is going to be a nice composition, but unfortunately these end up getting covered up on layer 3, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it in this stage, but I will tell you what I'm doing and why I'm doing it in the next stage. Come to think of it, I should probably speed this part up, because what's the point in watching this if I'm going to be editing it out? I'm having a really great conversation with myself, aren't I? When you do apply anything though like this, I always tap it to make sure there's no air bubbles underneath and making sure it does cover fully what we're doing. So let's go on to the next piece. I'm gonna move this on past it. So I did with the magic of editing. What I'm doing now is using my heat gun, and I am this is at real time, so you can see how I'm moving. It's constantly moving. My resin and my nozzle are not going to touch each other, but it's important that you move it on once so you don't burn it, and also you don't want to ruin your devices. So you will see me come back the other way. This is basically to help the resin self-level. I'm heating it up so that when I apply my casting craft, there is going to be less chance of it moving, but also I'm going to create a nice little movement into the area when I apply heat directly into it, because if it wasn't warmed up, you'd probably have a line there, and yes, it may move slowly, but the bit of heat that I'm going to do will help it move more freely as I try to sculpt it. Now I always put this part on towards the end because I want the resin to be starting to cure, so that it's not, it's going to give more control. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, when I do the sand area, normally I like to leave a little dark shade like you can see at the very front, because it helps with that illusion of 3D, but it wasn't to be for this piece. I'm leaving this part in, even though the front part I edit out. These waves I'm working on now, this one and the next one, do stay, and they are part of what creates the illusion of either the foam reflecting onto the ocean or the churning of the ocean underneath it as it is foaming that wave. So that's these two here. So the back half is exactly as I wanted it to be, and I just come and add a second layer on that. So you've seen it all real time. I have my heat at 360. That's the most common question I get added. I do my waves slightly different to other people. Choose the wave style that speaks to your heart and that you enjoy. I like it to look like you're more looking at the wave and then there's movement in it, rather than a big helicopter view, which is what a lot of people do. Still beautiful pieces. This time I didn't want the wave to go all the way across the board. I wanted it to look a little bit more organic, and I left a little bit of gap in between them, but do them how you want it to be. And I put a little bit more white into certain areas so that the foam wouldn't look so uniform. So again, I go back over the resin again quickly just before I come in and focus my concentration. But you can see I blow it one way, I blow it back the other, and I keep moving it slightly and going backwards and forwards like that. Sometimes I come in, I'll push certain areas again, but I'm not blowing any of the other resin at this stage because I want the heat or the movement to be in a concentrated area. Anyway, I think that's it for this conversation. I'm going to put some of Sharon's Dodgy FM on. Thor is being a little tinker, but absolutely adorable. Zeus is just an amazing fur baby. He's always by my side. The cats are behaving nicely. And we're going to start to pack our suitcases, ready to go to Australia to visit family. So there's never a dull day in Sharon's world at the moment. But yeah, I'll come back and speak soon as we get to the next layer.
So you saw me commence layer, or start commencing layer 2. Towards the end of layer 1, you would have seen me with a torch. That's me just making sure I'm looking for dust particles, hairs, air bubbles, any holes that's got no resin in, and I come in with my little torch. I made sure my board was leveled again, and I'm using the exact same colours. I've used my Super Sparkle White, and it's the same 300 mils, and I am repeating it. This time I chose to work at the baseline. Now, this is where I noticed my wave had crashed onto the beach further than I wanted it to do. So on this layer, I'm trying to control it and bring the white foam further back so I don't erode any more of that beautiful shoreline. And I am working with the dark, the lights, all the 3 different colours. Now this is where you have to sometimes breathe and think it's okay, because you think, well, Sharon, why did you put that foam down on that wave only to cover it up? As I said before, these are all transparent colours, so although you can't see very clear, you can still see them underneath. You can still see where I painted underneath, but it's all adding to depth and you can still see them through. Now, it's a trick with the mind that if you then come and put another layer on top and slowly put it slightly higher, you're going to get lights and darks. So it's either going to make it look like a reflection, or that it's part of where that wave is rolling over. Now, each layer I'm doing, it's a preference that I enjoy doing, that is unique to me, and that I think is aesthetically pleasing. You could have stopped on layer 1, and I think that's what you've got to understand about yourself. When is enough for you? Resin's expensive. You don't want to waste resin. You don't want to have to keep repeating layers. However, sometimes building up layers, even if they are thin layers, adds so much value to your composition, in my opinion. But that's just my words. So the process is exactly the same. I'm going to wait until I think it's all self-leveled. I'm going to make sure every gap's filled. I'm going to make sure all my edges are done. You're seeing it all in real time. I'll come in with my heat gun, try and make it self-level, and then towards the end I'll apply my casting craft again. I think that I nail the back 2 waves, and I don't mean to sound arrogant with that, but what I mean is there wasn't a lot of movement from when I put it on there. There wasn't a lot of movement on the front wave, and I did enjoy it. However, it had gone too much onto the shoreline. So on the next layer after this, which is the final layer, is where you'll see me edit out that section. Now, I contemplated for ages, do I do it? Do I start another one? And I thought, no, come on, Sharon, you can do this logically. If you then on your next layer just protect the back area, don't go near it really, and just focus it, it should still work. So take that leap of faith. And I did, and it worked out, I think, for the better. But I just want to know, have you ever done that before? Have you ever found that there's certain sections of your picture that you really enjoy
but there's certain things you don't enjoy. And have you been braved and edited it out? And do you have any tips and tricks to share with the new art community of people that are new to resin or new to doing seascapes? Anyway, this is the part I really enjoy doing at the moment, which is blending those tones through. So you'll see I do it zigzag to start with, all the way down. I'm just trying to drag those tones through so that there's a nice blending, but also to add to the illusion of movement, because no ocean has the exact same colour all the way through. There's light reflections, there's depths, there's movement of water, there's things underneath there. Now, the reason I drag it down after going across is, again, just to try and bring and gradient those colours so it's not so harsh at the back, but it bleeds through as though the ocean belongs together, but it's lighter where it's at the front. Anyway, that was a big exclamation to tell you what I'm doing here. The thing with this is you have to make sure that there's no lines obviously there unless you enjoy that. If you do find that the pigment has left a trace of where your lollipop stick has gone, a bit of heat gun will disperse that so it's more blended and less obvious. With my popsicle sticks, they are wooden, but when I've used them, I wipe them with a towel. I leave them on a silicone mat, and that means when they come back, they're less like wood and they've got that thin coat of resin on them, so you get less air bubbles next time. So that's another hot tip for reducing your waste on the environment. Anyway, same process, in with my heat gun, slowly heating the whole area up, let it settle for a little bit, and then casting craft. Blow my waves in exactly the same motion, in that up, down, constantly keeping it moving. That should help you create those waves. With this, when I apply casting craft, sometimes there's a balance that you have to have. When I first pour it down here, it looked a little translucent for me, which meant that it could dissipate into that pigment quite easily and not be as bold and present, and it could be almost misty. So you'll see that I apply it for all of them, but then I add a little bit more casting craft pigment. Now, if you put too much casting craft pigment, because it is an oil-based pigment, the oil can create like an oil slick on your painting. So I go by, one, how much I squirt in there and how it looks on the stick, but also once it hits that pigment, how is it looking? And I suppose that knowledge only comes over time, but I encourage you to explore. If you've not used casting craft or you're new to waves, get yourself a tiny little tile, so you're not going to waste too much pigments or material or resin, and then try doing different amounts of casting craft or white, whichever one you'll use in there, and see the different results, because it's only by doing do you really understand. Okay, so this is the last wave that, although I do like how it looks, it's a bit weird. It goes quite jaggedy, and although it's quite choppy, it's too much of a pattern. But as I say, I'm going to edit that part out. So in this as well, there is that super sparkle white, and at this stage I don't add any more shells or anything like that, but I do when I repaint it out. Anyway, Sharon, stop digressing. Put a little bit of Sharon's Dodgy FM on so they can relax and watch the process in real time. So you saw me remove the tape off the back and there was very little leakage coming through, and you saw me painting around the edge of the frame and applying a little bit of glitter on there. And that's when I was contemplating, do we remove this sand area back? And I think the client really wanted a little bit more sand area. So I took a leap of faith and I pulled my easel up while listening to some tranquil music and started to paint back. Now, it does mean I have to cover up the existing sand area and shells, but I think it's a little trade-off for what we should gain back from it. Now, the logic for me was I didn't want my sand to just be straight across, so it's slightly angled as it was originally. And I'll just add a few tones in there because I know that the sand's going to cover most of this up. But again, by me painting it, it helps me understand what is it going to look like. And that's when I worked out that the bit of white that you can see just above that sand area, that was going to be my undertone for the new casting craft. So I didn't want the casting craft to come any further forward than what it currently is showing there. So I apply clear to all of the board apart from just before where that white is, where it hits the sand. I apply a little bit of the turquoise to it, only so that there'll be different tones coming through with the white, because as I mentioned before, no wave foam is going to be pure white. You're going to see different shades in there and churning. But at this stage I thought, no, I can do this. I can do it. Just go very slowly, get your sand area all right, apply your sand to the area first where you're going to put your resin, and then if it moves it or it's not thick enough, you can apply a little bit more. Then put your starfishes on and your shells and a few of those gems. But it was still 300 mils of resin that I mixed up with a tiny little bit for my casting craft, a tiny little bit for the turquoise. The rest is just clear with some of the super sparkle white in there. Now, because I'm getting towards the maximum amount of resin this board would take, as far as it's nearly up the side. Now, I could apply a thin layer. I think the client wants me to leave it as it is, because when I apply the shells and the starfish on the second layer, now it's going to come through that other layer. So it adds a little bit of character, a little bit of texture, but it's a personal choice. You could also choose not to put any super sparkle white at this stage and just have it clear, because the sparkle should come through. But I think this lady's magical, so that little bit of sparkle in there is just going to add to that magic of the ocean. Sometimes when you use things that have a little bit of glitter in there, you can get a little bit of dimpling or measle effect to your resin, not when you look at it straight on but towards the side. So that's something else I normally dome for when there is no glitter in there. It's going to give a very slick top coat. So I think the compromise might be there will be a clear coat on there but not a thick one, so you'll still see the texture coming through, but the measles have been removed. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I'm taking it a stage at a time, just making sure I've got the white areas exactly as they should be, because when I apply this resin, I didn't want white blotches to be seen in there. And I'm about to take you back into the art studio where you'll see me apply my sand and go through the process. The wave motion is exactly the same. I held my nerve because most of it was clear. It was a quick process, but I wanted it to be almost starting to cure by the time I added that foam. Therefore, I knew I was going to keep control of how much beach was left this time. And again, make sure it's exceptionally level and take your time. And my most important part here was protecting the sand area, making sure there's enough sand, enough starfish and small shells, but also I was protecting those two back waves in that area there because I absolutely love it. And although I'm going to come back with that wave that's meeting the shoreline with the foam further into the ocean, I also wanted to protect some of that turquoise colour because it's magical. Now, it all worked out in the end. I'm glad I took this leap of faith. I think it's a beautiful piece. The client's very happy. I'm very happy. And I like the play on the lights and shades with that foam reflecting in the ocean. And the final thing is just to make sure you've removed any dust particles and put it to bed and rest. And
With the composition of my starfish, I was going for the rules of threes or uneven numbers. It's really important that the shells were very small for this from a perspective point of view, because the beaches, or this particular beach in Australia, there's not a lot of shells there, but there wants to be just enough that there's a little bit of interest in there and a little bit of magic. So that's what you can see me doing there, rummaging for the smallest ones, and again trying to group them so they're aesthetically pleasing, but they're not necessarily going to stand out too much, because when I apply my clear resin on top of this, the colour's going to go a lot darker. You do see me come and sprinkle some more sand on. That's because as the resin was self-leveling, gaps appeared, but because I'd put the paint underneath, obviously it just had look like it was texture. I'm using my brush now to remove any of the sand that's creeped forward, because I don't want any of it coming to the surface in the areas it doesn't need to be. And you do see me stirring the sand in. That's because some of the sand was just staying at the top and it had like a film to it, so I just mix it in there. Anyway, I think that's my brain dump. I hope that just watching it in real time, even if you've had the volume down and I've been waffling, that you've learned something from this. I would love to know if you've ever edited a section out. I think I've asked you that already, but let me know. I always start towards the edges so it can bleed out, and then I'm going to start to scoop it back in. Now, applying your sand first and then applying your resin over the top of it can actually take, or it feels like it absorbs more resin than if you put resin and float it in. I think it's just a trick of mine, but making sure there's enough in the middle so that it'll self-level. And I'm very cautious at this stage, because I stuck some more masking tape back around the edges, and because there's not a lot of gap between the last layer of resin and the top of the lip, I didn't want it to dry with my tape stuck in there. So be very cautious when using tape to protect your areas if your resin is going to cure to it. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, if you've enjoyed it, thumbs up, subscribe, share, comments are always welcome. I hope you come back and visit me again. If you're new to my channel, I hope you enjoy looking at some of my back catalogue. And if you've got any requests on certain things that you'd like me to feature on my channel, leave that in the comments. But other than that, I hope wherever you are in the world, you are safe. Remember, I do have time lapses now for people that don't necessarily need the instructions, just so you can see how certain things were created. But on that note, bye bye, and I'll see you later.
going to do my best to show you. I'm sorry there's high reflection in, but just the churning of some of this front wave as it's coming on. And we've got some nice little bits of shells, not too much, very small. And there must have been a storm because there's a few starfish washed up on here. There are those tiny little crystals in there which look like jellies, which are very known within Australia, or crushed glass, so whichever you want, but that's what the client wanted. And look at the blending of colour there, and that churning wave about to come in and crash on that shoreline again. And then the colour slowly graduates and we still have that churn in there. If it was sunny, you'd be able to see how it sparkles, so with that bling in there. But I don't think I'm going to get to see it for you. You're going to see all that high reflection, and you can just see the sparkle a lot. Whereas when it's front facing, normally you won't see it so much, but the reflection part is showing you that. Anyway, I also enjoy those tiny little bit of whispering white coming through. That implies that there's a little bit of movement within that ocean piece, and the depth of those darker colours that I painted on quite rustically, I think have also added value, and it is real sand that's in there. So yeah, this piece will be going over to Australia, where hopefully it's going to give some nice positive energy, and it's going to complement those whales that are on the way. Anyway, then we might just dome it. I'm waiting for the client to see whether she wants it doming to get rid of those slightly raised edges where the shells are. The reason I'm waiting for the client to tell me is because it's going to put the cost of shipping over, and the weight. If it was me, I would put a slight dome on it, but I wouldn't be changing the image at all. Anyway, thumbs up, subscribe, share, comments are always welcome. I hope that you enjoy seeing this little slice of heaven, and I hope you enjoyed seeing how you can be brave and edit out sections of your artwork and change the image. Does look like that one's further forward. Anyway, I'm Sharon, I'm Digresses. Speak to you later. Bye bye.